Hi, it's Dominic. If you're into AI agents, AI influencers, and the latest in the AI world, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. In today's video, I'll show you how you can build an AI agent that completely automatically creates 7x posts, including the matching AI images, out of a single URL of an article or blog post. But that's not all. The agent then will also store all the posts and images in a nice Google Sheet so that you can post them within seconds. We basically create a hyper skilled content generator that does all the heavy lifting for us so that we can focus on other important aspects of our business and don't waste countless hours figuring out what we could post about. In my opinion, this agent is a must have for anyone posting on the internet, as you can easily adjust the agent to other social media platforms as well. The best, after that video, you can build exactly that agent for yourself. First, I'll show you the general concept of the agent so that you understand how the agent interacts with all the tools and platforms involved. And after that, I will show you exactly how I built that agent on Relevance AI, a powerful no-code platform. If you have no experience at all yet with AI agents and Relevance AI, I recommend you to watch my first Relevance AI tutorial as well, because there I did not only talk about the basics of Relevance AI, but also about AI agents in general. Exactly as I already did it with my first AI agent tutorial here on YouTube, I will again include all the slides, prompts, and tools you see in that video in my free AI course. You find the link to the course in my YouTube description. Make sure to check it out as well. There's a lot of useful stuff in it. All right, that's it regarding the introduction. Let's jump to my screen and build an agent.
Good, let's begin and have a closer look what components our Xpost generator consists of so that we later better understand how it actually works so that you can rebuild that system. Here in the first slide, we see the overall concept of what we actually want to achieve. We have a Relevance AI agent, a passive agent that is operating autonomously in the background. That means we don't have to do anything. The agent will just work completely on its own, and it can scrape any article or blog post on the internet, also LinkedIn posts. It will write 7 suitable text posts, it will create 7 matching AI images, and it will save everything in Google Drive so that we easily can access the data and post it on X. And here on the left side, we see how this can look like in the end. We have a text containing also little emojis, and we have a matching AI image that represents what the post is about. This post, for example, is about the high energy consumption of AI models. And as you can see down here, we have a nice representation of exactly that message. Good, that's it regarding the general functionality that we want to achieve. And when we look here at the next slide, we see all the components involved and how they interact together to make this happen. We start here in a nice Google Sheet, and all we have to do is to post the URL of any article or blog post into that first cell of the Google Sheet. And then in a first step, a so-called Zapier trigger triggers takes our URL and sends it to our Relevance AI agent. And whenever the agent gets triggered by receiving a URL, it starts working. And then it knows that it has a tool called Xpost Generator, and it provides the URL to the Xpost Generator. And then within that Xpost Generator, which we will see in a second, we will use a LLM to create our 7 text posts. And in a second step, we also create 7 image prompts that match our X posts. And then these image prompts get sent to Replicate. And on Replicate, the images get created. And when the images are done, we get sent back download URLs to our Xpost generator. And then the entire data gets sent again to Zapier. And at Zapier, we download the images, we upload them to Google Drive, and we also store the posts in the Google Sheet so that we achieve an output that looks like that. And then we can just go to our Google Sheet and select the image we want to post and copy the text we want to post and go to X, post it, we're done. I know it might sound a little bit complicated when just looking at all the systems, but as you will see in a second, it's actually not that much work and we can easily make it happen. So let's jump over to Relevance AI and check out how this AI agent is actually built. Good, here we are at the starting screen of Relevance AI. As you can see, there's a lot going on. I already created some AI agents. Some of them you saw in other YouTube tutorials of mine. But in this tutorial, I just want to talk about the Xpost generator, and I won't talk in detail about the entire interface. If you're new to Relevance AI and AI agent building, make sure to check out my first Relevance AI tutorial, because there I explained the entire interface in every detail. Good, let's have a look at the Xpost generator. You see, it's already here listed at the agents I built. And when I click on that little hook here, we see, okay, the agent has just one tool available, the Xpost generator. And this is actually where the magic happens. The agent itself is super simple, as you will see in a second. And to check this out, we just click on it, and then a interface like that is opening. Right here, we could just use the AI agent manually. We could just post a URL into that window and then the agent would execute its tasks. But I also implemented that Zapier trigger, maybe you remember from the presentation a minute ago. And with that trigger, the URL gets actually extracted from the Google Sheet and sent to our agent fully automatic. But keep in mind that you also have the opportunity to just run the agent here manually. And to see what's actually happening within the agent, we have to click here on Edit Agent, and then we can look under the hood what's actually going on. So now we are inside of the AI agent and we can check out how it's actually built. As any agent, you can provide a little icon, you can select the name and a little description what the agent does. Keep in mind that this is not so important if you just use the agent for itself. But if you want to interact between different agents, it's very important to have a good description what the agent is actually doing so that the other agents understand in what case they have to work together with that agent. Then down here we have the triggers listed, and triggers are just possibilities to automatically start the agent. And in that case, I use Zapier, but later in the tutorial, we will go over to Zapier and I also show you that trigger so that you understand how this works. But keep in mind that down here, you have the opportunity to select it. And as any trigger, a trigger just starts the application. Good. Then there are two more things of importance. We have the core instructions and the tools. Before we look into the tool, which is the most important part of the tutorial because there actually the posts and the images get created, I will show you the core instructions. And the core instructions are just a big text prompt, or in that case, not even a big prompt, but any text prompt that defines the behavior and the role of our agent. And depending on how many tools your agent should use and how complex everything is, these core instructions can be pretty long, as you might saw in other YouTube tutorials of mine. But as you see in that case, as we just use one tool and everything works very simple, it's also a very short core instruction. There's just a role. You are an AI agent specialized in receiving URLs via a webhook. You get triggered whenever you receive a URL. Your task? Your task is to pass that URL as input to the tool Xpost generator. This tool will then execute to create Xpost. Your only task is to provide the URLs you receive to the tool Xpost generator. That's all. The rest will be executed automatically. So what I did here is I instructed the agent to literally do nothing else but taking any URL that is coming in and providing it to the Xpost generator. And why I did that, you will understand when we look exactly how the tool Xpost generator is built. And this is what we do now. To do that, we click here on Tools. And depending on how many tools you provided your agent, they are all listed here. But in that case, it's just one tool, the Xpost generator. And I created that tool on my own. So it's a custom tool I built. And to show you how it actually works, we just click here on Edit Tool. And then we come inside of that tool and we can exactly look and check out what's happening inside so that our Xpost gets generated fully automatic just by providing a URL. As you can see, also here we have the opportunity to just run the tool manually. We could just paste here a URL and then we can run the tool to create our X posts. But of course, we want that to happen fully automatic together with the agent. But I just wanted to let you know that you also have this opportunity. And to see what's actually happening within the tool and how it works, we have to click here on Build. And now we see the inside of the tool, all the steps and actions that are included in the tool. And then we can really understand how the X posts are generated out of the URL provided. Here on the left side, we see like a little menu or agenda of all the steps that get executed one after each other to make this happen. And then here on the right side, we see all these steps in detail, and when we click on them we see the inside and so on. And in a second we will go through the entire list of steps so that you can rebuild that for your own and so that you really understand what's happening within. But to better show you how this whole thing actually works, I will run it once with an example URL, and then the entire tool will be filled with real data, and you can better understand how the data is passed through the tool and manipulated to achieve our final outcome. In that example, I just want to go with an article about this trend that all these people are doing this like AI generated images of celebrity action figures. I think it's a huge trend right now. And I will just take that URL of that article and I will paste it in here to our Xpost generator. And now we can run the tool manually. And you will understand in a second why I did that. So we click here on Run Tool. And now the tool starts working. As you can see, now the processes within the tool start working. And this little agenda here on the left side gets executed. And you see that the tool gets now filled with data, our posts, and this will make it easier in the next step for you to understand what's actually happening in all these steps. Now we are at the point where the images get generated, and via API call, we contact Replicate to do that. So this takes quite a while, but I will come back to you when this is done. And then we go through the entire tool with the filled in data, and you will understand exactly how the tool creates our X posts out of the input URL. Good, the tool is done. As you can see here at the last step, we have a status success. The data is sent over to Zapier to finalize all that, but more on that later. Now we go to the very beginning of our tool and we go through it step by step so that you really understand what's going on here. We started with filling in the URL, and as I already told you, normally our agent would just fill that in for us whenever it receives a URL from our Zapier trigger. Then we come to the first step, and in that first step, we run a so-called web scraping tool. This is a default tool already provided by Relevance AI, and in that tool, the website gets scraped and all the content gets just extracted as text and gets put out in a variable. As you can see down here, the variable scrape, and we have all the text provided in this huge article. And then we can just keep working with all this text stored in the variable scrape. And we do that in the next step, a so-called LLM step. And in that step, we basically use OpenAI ChatGPT to transform our text, which is just plain text, into X posts. So let's have a look what's happening within that LLM step. You see, it's quite a lot. It's a bigger prompt. And everything starts with a role. You are a world-class social media expert specialized in X format Twitter posts. You know exactly how to write X posts that are interesting to broad audience, even though you only post about AI-related topics. And this is, of course, very important because I want my content to be interesting to all the people on the planet, because otherwise I would have no chance to go viral or anything if it's just super nerdy stuff. So I have to make sure that my posts are actually interesting to all kinds of people, even though I talk about AI topics. Then there's a task. Your first task is to analyze the article provided in that variable. You see, we can just reference it here. and to split it into its core themes. And now this huge text gets provided in that variable, and the LLM can read what we just scraped from the website. After that, you pull the most striking and controversial 7 facts out of each core theme. After that, you transform each fact into a killer X post by rewriting it in Twitter voice, punchy, emotional, and sometimes with cliffhangers. You see, I basically instructed the LLM how I also would think for myself when setting up a post for X. I included everything of importance into that prompt so that the LLM is actually able to create X posts that sound like actual X posts and not like just boring plain text. Good. And then I included some examples of just some random posts to make the LLM understand, okay, how should these posts actually look like? And then in the end, I also included an output example, and I told the LLM that I basically want all the posts provided in exactly such an output. And if you're already familiar with IT or you watch other tutorials of mine, you know this is a JSON format, and this JSON format makes it just easier for us to manipulate the data within and to access, for example, exactly post number 4 and then to further work with the data, because otherwise it would just be plain text. And then down here you see the output of this LLM step, and you see now we have all our posts already written and we have it exactly in the output format I wished. But there's one thing you have to know. Even though this looks like a JSON, it's not a real JSON. If we want to have a real JSON, we have to run another step, and this is exactly that step. Convert to JSON, and then I called it text post. And this is also an already built-in feature of Relevance AI. You can just drop that step, and then that part which looks like a JSON gets converted into an actual JSON. And now we have a real JSON file that contains all our posts. This is important because later we have to access exactly these posts to send them over to the other platform. But more on that later. Good. Now we have our text posts, and now it's time to write our image prompts, because remember, we also want to create matching AI images. And that's why I included a second LLM step, write image prompt for Flux. We will use the Flux models to do that. And if we look inside that tool, we see, okay, we have another huge text prompt, but this time it's about AI images. Role. You are a world-class prompt writer for AI image creation with Flux, as well as a social media expert specialized in X format Twitter posts. You know exactly what kind of AI images perfectly underline the message of a post to grab people's attention. Task. Your task is to look at the 7x post provided, and then this is why it is so important to convert it into a JSON. We can select exactly the 7x posts as single variables, paste them here into the text prompt, and then the LLM can read them as separate text prompts and not just as one huge text. So this makes it way easier for the LLM to process the data. And then we go on with, and to turn each post into a suitable and highly descriptive visual image prompt for an AI image generator like Flux. The image should visually represent the idea in the post and be eye-catching for social media. Do not repeat the post text. So what do I want to achieve here? I want to take in the text post, and then I want to output matching image prompts. And with that last sentence, I just wanted to make sure that in the output are just the image prompts and not a second time the actual text post. Then I also provided some prompts so that the LLM actually understands how these image prompts should be written. And then I also provided a output example so that I again get a nice JSON, but this time with prompt 1, prompt 2, and so on, containing all the image prompts for the matching AI images for each X post. Good. After that, we go on with, once again, this conversion step. We convert the thing that actually looks like a real JSON into a real JSON. And then we have a real JSON containing all our image prompts stored in that output variable, image prompts JSON. And then we can easily access also these image prompts. Good. If we look now on the left side to the agenda, we see, okay, we started with extracting the website content. Then we transformed the content into our X post, text posts. Then we converted it into JSON. Then we write our image prompts. Then we convert also that into JSON. And now there's just this big part missing. And as you can see, we have 7 following steps. And these steps are basically taking the image prompt of each image we want to create, and we send it over to another platform called Replicate. And there, the image gets created, and we get in return a URL. And when we go to that URL, we can download the AI image. This also sounds complicated, but you will see it's actually super easy. Just keep in mind that as we want to create 7 images, now we run 7 different API calls where we send the prompt to an image creation tool, get back a URL to download the image, and then we put everything together in another step, but more on that later. Good, so let's check out how these API steps actually look like. When we expand it, we can look inside. With it, we have a method post because we want to send data to Replicate where we will create the AI images. We have a URL, and this is exactly the URL of the AI model posted on Replicate that we want to use to create the AI images. In that case, it's the Black Forest Labs Flux 1.1 Pro Ultra model. I also had to fill in my API token. And then down here in the body, we send exactly all the information necessary for the AI model to be able to create these images and send them back. And now you might think, okay, how did he knew that exactly this is to be sent over to Replicate to create the images? And this is actually super easy because when we go to Replicate, and I go to the model I want to use, the Black Forest Labs Flux 1.1 Pro Ultra model, and I go to API, we see that they provided a very detailed instruction with all the information that we need to know to be able to access the model via API. So this is very, very useful. You see, this is very friendly for developers, as you can even select the programming language that is interesting to you. For example, if we go to HTTP, we see all the information we need to know to access the model via HTTP. And if we go to Schema, we see exactly the information we were looking for. When we click here on JSON, we see all the information that we can send over to Replicate and also in which form we have to send it over. So out of all these different settings, we can just select what we want to achieve, send it over, and then the image gets created exactly with the settings we sent here. For example, we could select down here the aspect ratio. And if we send, for example, 1:1, we get a 1:1 image. If we send a 16:9, we get a 16:9 image back. So just go through the entire documentation and then you will exactly know what input the model expects to create the images. Going back to Relevance AI, looking at this JSON body, we see that I basically sent an image prompt, and the image prompt is exactly the prompt number 1 provided here as a variable. Aspect ratio 16:9. The raw mode is activated. All you have to know at that point is that the raw mode is just making the AI images look more realistic. So that's why I selected true. If you don't want that, you just select false. Output format is JPEG and safety tolerance is 6. In that particular example, this is also not relevant, but the safety tolerance would be important if we want to create, for example, spicy images. If we want to create, for example, nude images, we have to go with a high safety tolerance. And if we want to make sure that we only get safe for work content, we go with safety tolerance for one, and then the model is very strict regarding that. That's all you have to know. And then we just set up exactly that 7 times. And if we go inside the 7 API post, and we check out the settings here, we see that now I had everything exactly the same, but with the difference that now I send JSON output prompt number 2. So in the second API call, we send the second image prompt and so on and so on. And we do that 7 times until we send all 7 image prompts over to replicate, and we get back 7 image download URLs so that we can download our images. So this one is the last API post. And after that, there are just 2 steps missing. In the next step, after all the API steps, we run another Python step. And I know if you're not familiar with Python, this looks a little bit frightening in the beginning, but no worries, it's actually a super simple script and you will totally understand this. Because now, before we send over all this data to Zapier to be able to store it in Google Drive and in our Google Sheet, I have to create one last big Python file containing all the content that we actually need to send over to the other platform. And in the case of our Xpost generator, these are the 7 image download URLs that are stored in exactly this variable. So if we go, for example, to the output variable of our last API call, we see that the image download URL is stored exactly here in response body output. And of course API 7 because it was API call number 7. And if we go down here and look at the beginning of our Python script, we see, okay, API 7 response body output. So here we get exactly the image download URL of image number 7. And we do this for all 7 images. After that, we do exactly the same with the text posts. Now we just take out the 7 text posts, also stored in a JSON called text post JSON. And then we also want to include the website URL to have this also available in our Google Sheet. And we separate all these JSON inputs with these 3 vertical lines. This also sounds a little bit confusing now here at Relevance AI, but you will see in a second at Zapier why we did this. It's actually very practical. Just keep in mind that this is basically to separate all the 7 different entries within our big JSON to be able to extract them easier afterwards. And as you can see down here, as a return, we have 3 different JSON files again, and it's also listed down here. We have all the image URLs, we have all the text posts, and we have the source URL, and all that is stored again in a JSON. And now there's only one step missing. We have to send all this huge data over to Zapier, and at Zapier, we can easily just store it in Google Sheet and Google Drive, and then we're done. So let's keep going with the last step. When we click here on the last step, the API call sending data to Zapier for processing, we see also here we go with post, and we have a so-called webhook URL. And a webhook URL is basically just a URL that is listening if there is any data available, and whenever new data is coming, it collects the data for us. And this is exactly happening here, and you will understand how this works when we go over to Zapier in a second. Then we also defined here the content we want to send, in that case JSON, and here in the body we selected the 3 variables that we want to send. You see, Python transformed image URLs, Python transformed text posts, Python transformed source URL. And if we look here at the output of our step before, we see, okay, transformed image URLs. Here we have the URLs, then we have text posts, and we also have source URL. And this is exactly what gets sent down here over to Zapier. And at that point, we are completely done with Relevance AI. From now on, we go on at Zapier, another platform, and you will see that in a couple of seconds, we are done with the entire X generator. Good. I think at that point, it makes total sense to step back a second and to look again at the big picture. So what have we done until now? We started with the URL that got provided to our Relevance AI agent, and then the X post generator created our X posts and also created the images at replicate. And then we sent the entire data over to Zapier. And this is where we go on now, just to make sure that you actually understand and can still follow me where we are in the entire process. So in this example here of the tutorial, we basically started the entire process here by just entering the URL directly to our tool. But normally we would start here and send it over to Zapier via webhook. But to make this easier here in the tutorial, I just started it right away. Good, now we go over to Zapier and I will show you how the last step works, where we basically just download our images, send them to Google Drive, and then update our Google Sheet so that we have all the posts available. Good, as you can see, now we are here at Zapier, and Zapier is basically a automation platform. Relevance AI is perfect to create agents that interact with different tools, but Zapier is perfect if you just have straightforward automation. And why do I like Zapier? They have tons of integrations with different platforms and tools, and it makes it super easy to just store data within Google Drive or Google Sheet or whatever. And in my experience, it's the easiest tool, especially for beginners who have not a lot of coding experience. Everything is super clear and straightforward, and you can't make too many errors here. And what we can do here is basically build so-called SAPs. And SAPs are just automation workflows built on Zapier. They call it SAPs, but as you can see, I already built quite a lot of them. And for our X post generator, we need exactly 2 of them. We have one time the trigger, which just takes our URL from the Google Sheet and sends it to Relevance AI. If we click on it, you see it's super simple. You see, we start with a so-called trigger. In that case, we could just select Google Sheets trigger. Every time a Google Sheet gets updated, it triggers, and then it takes the URL and it sends it to our webhook over to Relevance AI. And this is all this SAP does, super easy. It's just watching the Google Sheet. Okay, whenever there's a URL, it sends it over. And then I also included a little filter that just makes sure that it only triggers and sends over data to Relevance AI if it is a true URL, because I don't want to run the tool with errors. For example, if I make a little mistake and there's not even a real URL in the Google Sheet. But that's the first step. This is the trigger that actually starts the entire agent. And now I show you the second step that receives all the data we just created at Relevance AI, this huge JSON file with all the image URLs and the text prompts. And I will show you how that second step works. Good, so this is the last step. You see, it's a little bit bigger as the first one, but also quite simple, as you will see in a second. And for that one, I go into edit so that we can look inside and that you better understand how it actually works. But you will see it's actually super, super simple and not a big thing. Good, we start here with the webhook, and it's a so-called catch hook. And as I already told you earlier at Relevance AI, this webhook is basically just a URL that is listening the whole day if there's new data available. And whenever there's new data available, it just pushes the data into our workflow. When we go to configuration and then to test data, you see that we can just click here on find new records, and then we can check out the latest data that was sent. And you see that this is exactly the data we send over from Relevance AI. We have here the image URLs separated with these 3 vertical lines. We have here our text posts also separated, and we have the source URL. So this is the data we get over. And then in the next step, we run a so-called JavaScript. When we go to configuration, you see that down here, we run a little script of Java code. And what this basically does is that it separates our entries again in the JSON, so the different image URLs and also the different text posts again with these three little lines that we placed into the data to actually be able to identify it later. And then it separates all these entries so that we can operate with them separately. Sounds a little bit difficult, I know, but believe me, it's actually quite simple. Up here, we just define, okay, we have image URLs that we want to separate, and we have text posts that we want to separate. And as an output, we get then the items in a separated form. Why do we do that? Why do we separate the items? It's pretty simple, because in the next step down here, we want to run a so-called loop. And why do we run a loop? Very simple. We have 7 text posts and we have 7 images, and we have to download every single image. We have to upload every single image to Google Drive, and we also have to update our Google Sheet with the image and the text post. And we have to do that 7 times. And that's why we created a loop here. It's called looping by Zapier. And when we click on the first step of that loop, and we go to the configuration, we see that this loop will loop over the URLs and also over the posts. And this is why we separated it in the step before, because now we have clear, distinctive elements that we can loop over, and by that we can run that step 7 times. And as you can see, in every loop iteration, we use another webhook to download the images from Relevance AI here. We did that by providing the image URL here. Then it gets downloaded. Then it gets uploaded to Google Drive. We just had to select the folder that we want to use for that. To upload it, we can just easily select here our Google account and the folder we want to upload it to. And then in the last step, it gets stored in a Google Sheet, and we can also just select here the account we want to use, and in the configuration we can then define exactly, okay, in which spreadsheet do we want to store it, on which sheet, what exactly do we want to store. Here it's the Google Drive image link, and also where exactly do we want to post that data. In that example, it's a column called text post. And there we will fill in exactly the text post of our X post. And in the last column, I also want to store the source URL so that I always know what article or blog post I actually used for exactly that X post. And that's basically it. This is how the loop is constructed. This runs 7 times, and then 7 images gets downloaded, and our Google Sheet gets updated with 7 new images and 7 new X posts. Good, and when I go over to exactly that Google Sheet, we see that we have here exactly the links to our images. We have the text prompt of the X post so that we can just post it. And on the right side, we always have the source URL, which was the source for exactly that post, so that we can still find out, okay, what were we actually talking about in exactly that post, in case, for example, somebody is asked. This was an old example, and down here we see we have the fresh posts. Let's check it out. For example, here at row 11, if we look at the post, Maria Picasso Piquet says AI art lacks humanity. Her self-portraits full of life and personality. Can AI ever truly capture the human touch? And then when we look at the AI image that got created, I think this looks absolutely fantastic. It's obviously AI art, and it perfectly represents what we are talking about in the post. Let's check out another example. For example, here we have artists are fighting back. Thousands are saying no to AI-generated starter packs that risk their livelihoods. Hashtag starter pack no AI is more than a trend, it's a movement. And if we check out the AI image, it looks absolutely perfect. It's a demonstration of artists. And yeah, we could just combine that with our image, go over to X and post it. And one last thing that I want to show you is if we go to Google Drive, you see all the images are also stored here in Google Drive so that I can use them for whatever I want. And you see it's always two because I ran it also before for another article, and these images are also available here. Yeah, that's basically it. This is how you can create 7x posts, including matching AI images out of a single URL.
That's it, we build our AI agent. I know some parts of building an AI agent can be a little bit confusing, especially in the beginning when you're just starting out. You will notice that when you click through all that and try to build the agent for yourself, that you most likely get stuck at one point. But then you just go back to the tutorial or you check out any other source to find out what's actually the problem. You overcome it, you learn, and then you will get it done. That's how you really learn. That's how you actually improve, and it's totally normal. As I already mentioned, I uploaded all the resources, the slides, the prompts, and even the tools you see in that video to my free AI course, so you can just download them and copy what I just did. You also find tons of extra information there, also about some very important IT basics, so you definitely want to check out that free course as well. That's it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and you got a lot of value out of it. If so, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments how you like that agent and what tutorial you would like to see next. I hope we see each other in the next video. Take care and goodbye.